Tell me if this sounds like you or someone you know. You're not new to Shogi. In fact, you're pretty good, probably comfortably in the single-digit Q range. You can pretty easily beat people who are near your level, and if you do lose, you know exactly how you lost, and you can fix that problem by the next game. But there's that one player, either a Dan player or maybe even the same rank. You want to beat them, but you can't. Every single game you play against them, it feels hopeless, no matter how many changes you make to your strategy, even if you follow the advice that they give you during post-game discussion. But you like them and you want to keep playing with them. So they offer you a handicap, and it hurts. You feel like your pride has been wounded because they want to play you in a game that gives you an unfair advantage. You stubbornly say, no, I'll just get better. But what if I told you that handicap games will make your even games better? In his book, The Art of Shogi, Tony Hosking writes, handicap games form a vital stage in the process of improving one's understanding of shogi, and are especially useful for teaching amateur players and apprentice professionals. There's a ton of great reasons to play handicap games, not the least of which being that your opponent can use their full strength on you without risking completely steamrolling you in the opening. This is useful not only for your own improvement, but it also means that your opponent can have fun playing their best while playing an even match against you. Also, with a big enough skill gap, you are still at risk of losing a handicap game against your opponent. When I went to the International Shogi Forum in Paris back in 2011, I was privileged enough to play a 6-piece handicap game against then Meijin Toshiyuki Moriuchi and legendary player Yoshiharu Habu. I was completely crushed in both games, despite the gigantic piece advantage. I did redeem myself though by winning against Naruyuki Hatakayama, who kindly told me I need to stop playing 6-piece handicap. But that's besides the point. So, how do handicap games work? The handicap taker, that is the weaker player, decides how big the handicap should be. In club functions, this tends to be determined by rank, but outside of ranked settings, you simply choose which handicap you want. Based on the handicap, certain pieces are taken from the side of the handicap giver, that is, the stronger player, and they're completely removed from the game. After the pieces are removed, the handicap giver always goes first, and then the game proceeds like a normal game of shogi. In the rare case of an impasse, the handicap giver gets credit for all the pieces removed from the game. If you still think this is too big of an advantage, remember that in shogi you can reuse captured pieces. Obvious, right? Well, that means if you're playing a 2-piece handicap, for example, and your opponent takes your rook and bishop, that means you're now the one with the handicap. Let's really quickly cover the different types of official handicap shogi game. What you've seen on the screen for a while now is the lowest of the official handicaps, the 6-piece handicap. The handicap giver starts with no major pieces, no lances, and no knights. And basically, if the handicap taker just focuses on making edge attacks, where there's no defense at all, then even with a huge skill gap, it's pretty easily winnable. Up next is the 4-piece handicap, which simply adds knights to handicap giver's side. It's still pretty easily winnable from forcing edge attacks, but is just slightly more complicated because of the added defenders to the edges. Once you get past 4-piece handicap, there's 2-piece handicap, which puts the lances back, so all handicap giver is missing is their major pieces, which actually really complicates the situation. It's said that 1 Dan and 2 Dan players should have even games against professionals at this handicap. So what handicap giver does is basically advance everything to the middle of the board and just commit to defense, so they have all of their defensive pieces. And they're just gonna wait for handicap taker to make a mistake, and then use any pieces they get in a counterattack. And from here I'll just really quickly cover the other handicaps. After the 2-piece is Rook Lance handicap, which is the left lance and the rook. After that is just Rook handicap, which removes the rook. Then Bishop. Finally, just Lance handicap. There's actually a really famous Lance handicap game from back when professional players used handicaps. In the 1956 Osho title match between shogi giants Yasuharu Oyama and Kozo Masuda, After winning 3 consecutive games, Masuda was forced to give a lance handicap to Oyama, and he won, actually. On top of allowing your opponent to play at full strength, handicap games also allow you to explore aspects of the games that you might not get to experience in even games. For example, in a 2-piece handicap game, you're able to practice playing against extremely stubborn defense without having to worry about being attacked, which allows you to spend your entire game focusing on your attack. In Lance handicap games, which is a small handicap, you come to realize that singling out and targeting a weak point can turn the tides of an otherwise even game. That being said, a big thing to remember about playing handicap games is that you really need to play towards the handicap in order for it to be an even match. Through handicap play, you should be learning to constantly look for weaknesses in your opponent's formation. Playing the same way you'd play in a normal game, for example playing 4th tile rook against rook lance handicap, will allow your opponent to minimize their weaknesses and focus on making it feel like you're playing an even game with them instead of a handicap game. If this all sounds interesting, then I definitely recommend looking further into handicap shogi. Hidetchi has a couple videos that touch a little deeper on the subject than me, and for a much deeper dive, you should read Larry Kaufman's articles about handicap shogi, or Tony Hosking's The Art of Shogi. So in the future, don't get upset when someone offers you a handicap. You should eagerly take it as a way to practice skills you don't usually get in even games. And who knows, maybe after playing handicap games enough, you'll finally be able to overcome that rival of yours. If you have any questions, make sure you leave them down in the comments, and make sure to subscribe for more shogi content. I am Rico with Shogi House, and I will see you next time.